The best way to look at how these tools are used is actually to look at some specific examples and see how that would work in real life. Just a couple of brief ones then. If we look at a conference room, previously 6 to 8 persons, standard conference table. If you did no configuration at all and applied the 6-foot rule, that would make that conference room useful for 3 people to work in, either for meetings or actually as a workspace at work area themselves. If you took out the conference tables and replaced those with desks, you would still only get 3 people into that space comfortably when applying the 6-foot rule. If you added Nooks into the system, if you added with the Nook huddle pods being used by single users, so 3 Nook huddles and a solo, you're suddenly starting to make that previously what was a conference room into a 6-person usable space, just to see how that would be configured here. And then if you add panels into it, you're obviously adding additional ability for people to use the space. David, can I just ask you to talk us through this a little bit?
Cool. I just wanted to bring this up just to have a little bit more element of interactivity in the webinar. So we're not just looking at images, but we can actually see with a little bit more feeling for the physical, the kind of space we're talking about. We're not suggesting for a moment that this is now any longer a conference room. The idea here is about making use of every square foot in the space to, if you're going to reduce your number of people inside, that you want to be able to use the space as efficiently as possible. So here you have the possibility to get possibly 1, 2, 3, if the Nook is going to be configured for a single person at a time, or if you're going to configure them for double, it could be 1, 2 per Nook, 3, 4, and then 5 with an extra person in a solo. You'll notice I have it configured as such at the moment that from one side it looks like it's a see-through panel, and on the other side, just as an illustration, it won't be a two-way mirror as it looks here, but just as an illustration, it could also be whiteboard in between. So it could be for seeing each other or not, whatever it is you need it to be. The idea with taking the panels off is if this was in a small glass conference room type space, you probably wouldn't want to block the natural light from coming through.
Yeah.
So the fact that you can take the back off makes that possible. And Stuart's dealt with most of the important points, but one thing I wanted to add is just generally, as I look across and I hear and read almost everything there is to read on what the new office needs to look like, I hear so much about panels and practically nothing about pods. And I think an opportunity is being missed. These things were designed with features built in that fit very much to what's happening in the world right now. They allow for density of footprint, but with protection, without exposure to each other. And I think that can be very valuable. So I'll just hand back over to Stewart to look at a couple of other scenarios, and then I'll.
So let's look at a slightly more complex scenario, but perhaps more common as well. A small co-working space, mixed-use office with a kitchen area, soft seating area, breakout space, and with bench desk systems. So in this particular scenario here, 12 to 18 people comfortably. This is obviously the built structure here. So if you were to change that, apply the 6-foot rule here, slightly move the soft seating around, do alternate desk seating. You can't actually move this structure here that's built in, and we're not looking at actually any construction or movable wall systems. Obviously, you're going to remove the kitchen table because that's actually a main sort of thoroughfare for people. That brings occupancy down to potential 9 people in this space here. If you add a few nooks down the middle, so again, as opposed to applying movable wall systems or any construction at all, using 3 huddle pods as a room divider, you could have whiteboards on the back, for example, and then configuring a huddle of two solos, 1 standard huddle pod, and then an accessible nook, the open. You've got 16 people potentially into that space and comfortably and safely. Slight additional reconfiguration, removing some of the desks and adding in some more huddle pods. With the dividers, you're up to potentially 20 people here, including, again, the accessible open here. if you then remove all the desks totally and put in nooks, then some couple of solos, a huddle, you're looking at potentially 21 people with dividers. And David, so we've got multiple scenarios here, which sort of it basically sort of works whichever way you want to shake it, basically, right?
Yeah, indeed. And look, you know, I'm really mindful all the time that, you know, the old adage, anyone who's heard me spoken will hear me say it, that if all you have is a hammer, then you make every problem look like a nail. And I'm really mindful that we don't do that here, that, you know, we are proposing things that we believe genuinely have a value. I'm not sure if we'd ever realistically see an office kitted out like this. That's not the point. The point is to show it in all the different ways that it can be sliced and diced, that it is no longer a single thing, but it is a growing system of things, of ingredients to help workspace develop through this situation and into a new way of working in the future. So indeed, as Stewart says, we have a single huddle fitted out for one person here. Importantly, we brought in our ADA compliant, but bear in mind always with our ADA product, it isn't exclusively ADA. It doesn't need to have a wheelchair for it to work. It can have regular ergonomic office chairs, the tables that companies have already invested in. They don't have to throw them out with the Nook, with the open. They can use them in here as well. And I think that's really important. We can have a mix then of solo spaces around the back for your video calls, because remember, there's going to be a lot more video calling happening in these offices because their colleagues are working from home. So loads more, I think, making allowance for small withdrawal spaces where people can go into to make those video calls. But then importantly, again, really important, don't isolate them. There's an anxiety around phone boxes right now, not about, let's say, the cleanliness of being in an enclosed space. That sounds perfect. But what about the last 2-3 people that were in there? We're going to have to make sure that they get sterilized in between uses. So allowing the space to be a bit more open, a bit more breathable, and possibly even adding in an element of antimicrobial or air filtration is really going to take care of that. But this is the first level to taking care of that. Again, a mix of uses here, and this is a really interesting kind of setup just to show, you know, the difference between what it might be like if you allow to see through from one side to the other in the space, using the space against the wall, lots of room in between, lots of people can work in this space, but without breathing on each other or feeling like they're exposed to droplets in the air and things like that. And then just finally, as a means to kind of illustrate all the many different possibilities in a kind of an extreme scenario, again, not really imagining that it would ever be done like this, but just to show all the different ways. So imagine this is like an island in the middle of the space. Imagine we've got a planter in here now to bring an element of biophilics into the Nook. We've used a recess that we've created behind the open to put a mural on the back of the wall, maybe thrown in a sofa or a beanbag or something like that that already exists in the space. Here, in this particular space here, we're seeing 4 people being able to have a distanced meeting in 2 nooks, which are back to back. So dividers all in space, but still able to have conversations with each other. 2 people here working independently, 2 people here having a meeting, able to chat with each other on the either side, but not feeling exposed to droplets in the air from direct, from people's mouths and things like that. Again, with the open, using mural to bring biophilics and brightness, maybe brand, motivational messages and what have you, using the existing furniture that's in the space. I think that's really important. We don't provide that kind of thing. I think it's just really good to recognize that, you know, we're experts in one aspect, others are experts in others, and use the 2 in combination if you can. Again, with the accessible, and then at the end, just a little day bed concept that we're working on at the moment, but very soon we're going to be able to bring it to market. And it's very simple. It's the same as an existing Nook, but with a couple of components changed, splash of color, mural on the back, and you've got something really special. So I'll hand it back over to you there, Stewart, to take us home.